Thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of the Unity Through Cinema podcast. I am very, very lucky to have a wonderful guest with me today, the lovely Bryony Monroe, an actress at that. Can you believe it? Thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So I don't know, you wouldn't know this, but this is the first time I'm ever actually interacting on a podcast with someone who is officially an actor who I've actually seen on the screen. So while I may seem calm, there's a big part of me that's just like, oh my God, right now.
Oh, no, don't feel like that.
Well, you don't expect to reach out to someone who is officially working in the industry and say, hi, do you want to do this little thing that probably nobody knows about, and then actually say yes. So I can't thank you enough for actually wanting to do this.
I'm really looking forward to it, so it'll be good.
Also, for those who wouldn't know, that Bryony here just turned 23 years old yesterday. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Feeling old already.
Oh God, I think we're all feeling old in this time period right now. Celebrating one's birthday during COVID is not ideal. But being able to walk away and still say, well, at least I'm alive till age another year.
I'm breathing, yeah. That's the main thing.
Is all we can ask. Now, the day that you followed me on Instagram, I think I was squealing like a little girl.
Oh.
I was so amazed. I had director Scott Vickers, he had posted, I think he was talking about Matriarch, the film Matriarch, ending up something on a streaming site or a new special release in another country. And all I did was comment saying how that I had placed that film on my top 10 horror films of the decade. And within a few moments, Matriarch Page is following me, Scott Vickers is following me, Charlie Blackwood's following me, you're following me, and I'm just like, I don't know what crazy land I have stepped into, but I'm loving it.
You're loving it.
And on top of that, I've ended up seeing what an absolutely lovely and delightful person you are.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's very sweet.
You, for being 23, you seem very mature for your age. And you are very open and welcoming to everybody, it seems. There are some people who can be like 17 years old and they're actors, and they're like, I don't have time for anybody out there. And there you are on social media, willing to interact with anybody. It's lovely.
Yeah, I actually love interacting with people online, just all the time, and it's always great meeting new people. And I just feel like I remember one time Liz Capaldi replied to one of my comments, and I was like, I was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, that's Liz Capaldi. So, I mean, I'm not saying I'm that level, but if I can make someone just smile for a moment in their day, that's really important to me, because you don't know what kind of day they've been having, what kind of week they've been having. And if that just makes someone go, oh, that was nice, she got back to me, then, I'm happy.
Yeah, in the age of social media, it's amazing how just getting that little notification that like someone liked your post can really just make your whole day. I had a friend recently, she's a YouTuber as well, and she watches a lot more obscure films, and she posted something, I can't even remember what it was, but Mark Hamill, it was about Mark Hamill, and Mark Hamill actually liked it.
Wow.
So safe to say she was having a really good day that day. And I get it. It's just one of those little things.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
Now, when I asked you if you would be willing to do this podcast, you informed me that you are autistic,
Hmm.
which I appreciate you being open and sharing that with me. And being that one of the things I definitely want to do on this podcast is show a lot of cultural diversity, and also showing just all the differences that occur in the world, and basically that we all come together through film. Hence the
Exactly.
ridiculously cliche name of the title. So
I
one
love
thing
it.
that I would thank you. So one thing that I would like to do is that being how you informed me what your condition is like for you, I would like to leave this episode unedited. So if there are any moments where you are trying to process, as you explained, actually, I'm just going to ask, how is your form of autism like for you?
Um, it's both a blessing and a curse at the same time. I feel with my work, it really helps because when it comes to direction in a film, I take everything very literally. So that helps when it comes to direction. Um, but in my personal life, I feel it can be very challenging at times. I just find social situations in general really exhausting and draining. Um, it's like a fish out of water, I just feel very out of place and suffocated. And eye contact as well. I'm actually terrible at eye contact. And because of this, a lot of people think I'm bored or uninterested in what they have to say. And
Mm.
that's completely untrue, because when I make eye contact with someone, I just feel very uncomfortable. But it's strange because when I'm acting, it's like it's totally different. I feel eye contact is normal and everything is functioning, and I'm able to keep up with everything when
Right.
I'm someone. And I just wish I could switch that to real life. That would make it so much easier.
That would be, I can only imagine. You mentioned that it takes you a little bit longer to process and answer questions.
Hmm.
So, so how long does it typically take you sometimes to take that in and then form an answer when I'm asking something like I am right now? Like, how long can it take?
Well, yeah, it depends on what the question is. If I've noticed that if the question's quite long, then I'll have to maybe go back and say, what was the other part of that question again? Like, because sometimes I tend to go off on a tangent and then I'll go, oh, I can't actually remember what the other part of that question was. Um, but direction can be the same in films. If a director goes, right, I want you to first go do this, then do that, then do this, then do that, then I can be like, whoa, slow down. But I mean, I take it and eventually, just it can take a little while, and sometimes I just stop and it's like silence, and I'm just kind of going through the motions in my head. And then I didn't realize it was a subconscious thing, but when I was younger, I would give a nod when I'd taken it all in. So somebody would be speaking and I'd be like looking around, and then I'd be like, nod, okay, right, I've got it.
So does that, how do I, gone blank on my own question. So there we go. I need to process my own stuff as well.
Okay, take your time.
Does it, when you're in that moment, you're trying to process things, do you start getting anxious or do you kind of just check out?
When I was younger, when I was really young, I used to check out. I actually thought I was falling asleep in class when I was really young, because I just remember it being like blacked out. I just couldn't remember anything. And then I would wake up, inverted commas, and be like, what just happened? I've fallen asleep and I don't know what the teacher said. And I would go home in such a state because I'd be crying to my mum saying, I fell asleep in class and I woke up and I didn't know what to do. And the school actually thought I was suffering from petit mal seizures, because
Oh,
even back then, they didn't believe women could have autism, that girls couldn't have autism. So they had immediately ruled that out. So I wasn't diagnosed until I was 19. But that's quite normal for females to not get diagnosed until much later.
I did not know that. I've never heard that before. I don't know if that's a worldwide thing or a thing in Scotland, but I honestly did not know that they didn't really believe that women had autism.
Yeah, yeah, because women are better at masking. They call it masking. So they're much better at conforming to social normalities, with social cues, and they have a lot of inflections. They can basically adapt to their surroundings a lot easier than males can. A lot of males make it quite obvious that they have autism. And for some, nobody knows why, but for some reason, women are just a lot easier in social situations with being able to keep up with everything going on around them, and it doesn't look obvious that they have it.
Wow. So once again, basically saying women are better than guys.
Well, saying nothing.
So, due to what you have told me about how autism is for you, if there is, I'm going to leave this episode unedited. So, if there is any time where you take a little bit longer to process something, I'd like to leave it as it is so people can kind of see it in the moment.
Yeah.
And understand that it's a normal thing and it's not really hard to interact with someone who's going through that if you just kind of just give them some patience.
Yeah, of course, exactly. Thank you.
Although apparently, as we've learned in 2020, patience is running a little thin with some people.
Especially when you're driving out in the roads, that's
Oh
that's
God,
bad.
you gotta say thank God for lockdown, less people on the roads.
Well, the people that are on the roads are very impatient.
That is very true. So, how long have you been acting for?
So I did youth theatre from the ages of 8 to 14, and then I did supporting artist work when I was when I was 16. And I've been acting professionally in main role since I was 18. So it's always been kind of there in my life from a young age.
Wow, it's crazy because you are so young, and so I kind of have to keep reminding myself that you're only 23, and so when you say 18, I'm like, that actually wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
But what made you want to pursue acting as a career?
It's always been something that's been there. So I grew up with a lot of movie musicals. Um, so I always had such an admiration of how big their gestures were and how over the top everything was. And I always had an admiration for it, but it was only until I was about 8 that I watched Titanic. And I know it's not classed as a classic for actors. It was the first film that I watched where I questioned what actors did. I questioned every little detail. And then when the credits went up at the end, I just thought, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to go into.
So Titanic was the official catalyst.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Well, there we go. A ship may have sunk, but a career came up.
Exactly. Something good came of it, I suppose.
So you mentioned movie musicals. I'm quite the fan of movie musicals myself. Do you have a favorite movie musical?
That's really difficult because I love Andrew Lloyd Webber. I think he's just a genius. It's got to be between Jesus Christ Superstar and Phantom of the Opera.
Wow, yeah. That I am. I've grown up listening to Andrew Lloyd Webber's music myself. My brother pretty much has raised me on Broadway.
Oh.
So it's just like, while everybody, is a kid, in the 90s and all the kids are listening to like Backstreet Boys, and meanwhile I'm listening to friggin' Evita and Cats. And I'm just like, yep, this is my normal life.
What's your favorite musical?
Oh gosh. Musical. It's so hard. Phantom of the Opera is definitely up there. It's one of those captivating things, and I remember the first time I got to see it on stage, and the fact that they managed to do this pretty much everywhere around the world, where you have the moment where it begins and the chandelier
Yeah.
just gets brought up, and those notes, as soon as you hear that melody, it's like, whew,
Yeah,
that
it just chills. Yeah.
yeah, it's intense. So it's hard for me not to love Phantom of the Opera. I am quite a fan of Wicked and Avenue Q as well. Avenue Q is
Yeah,
absolutely hilarious.
it's great, isn't it?
But in terms of just like a movie musical, I think my I think what I did a top 10. I think a Rocky Horror Picture Show is number one for me.
Oh, I love that. It's so good.
Yeah, that's one of those ones. I know a lot of people who still haven't seen it. I'm like, what are you waiting for?
Oh. Oh, you have
It's a,
not lived if you've not seen Rocky Horror Picture Show.
right? It's one of those. It's an event, and I love that it's become such a phenomenon around the world that they have, theaters that will play it and people will dress up and do sing-alongs, and it's an amazing thing. Although I don't think you can get a better Frankenfurter than Tim Curry.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely
He's
not.
just
I saw it on stage, and there was an actor called Oliver Thornton who was in the role, who was as close to Tim Curry in that role as I have ever seen, and he was amazing. But yeah, I think to be transported back in time and to see Tim Curry in that role would be like mind blowing.
he can pull off a pair of stilettos far better than I can, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I know the jealousy is real.
Yeah, I feel that way anytime because I live for drag and camp and all that stuff, and anytime I see a man in a pair of heels, I'm like, I wish I could do that.
I know. I feel the same whenever I see RuPaul's legs. I'm just like, why do I have legs like that? Like, man.
And it's funny, he had a period. Obviously, you've said this, so you're a fan of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Hard not to be. It's amazing. But I have noticed that, he had his time in like the 90s where he was very much showing his legs, and then he went into the glamazon phase where he's wearing more gowns. I feel like he started to go back into showing a bit more of his legs these days.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think he's definitely reliving his 90s, which is great. 90s
Well,
were amazing.
as the song says in The Producers, when you got it, flaunt it.
Flaunt
So.
it, exactly. Yeah, love that song. Love that music.
So, since I've been following you on social media, and I say following, not stalking, because I'm not that crazy, it's clear that you can act. That one I've already known outside of social media, and then I've noticed you can sing.
Well, I can hold a tune. I think there's a difference between.
Oh, I don't know. Based on what I heard, I heard some very lovely pitches and melodies where I could say, okay, next thing, maybe you should be going into a movie musical next.
Thank you.
Greatest Showman 2?
Oh, yeah, I'd love that. That'd be great. That would be fantastic.
Do you have any other hidden talents locked away yet to come out?
I can dance like I have 3 left feet, never mind 2. So I think that takes a lot of skill, actually.
That would actually.
But no, all joking aside, I used to do ballet from a really young age.
Oh, wow.
And it's been one of my biggest regrets giving that up. I really wish I'd stuck with it.
Why did you give up ballet?
At the time, oh gosh, I can't even remember how old I was. I would have only been about 6 or 7. I was really young. And in order to move up to the next level, we had to sit an exam. And that thought just terrified. I don't know why, but it just absolutely petrified me. So at the time, I was like, I would rather just give it up than sit this exam. But looking back on it, I wish I'd just allowed myself to be terrified and just go ahead with it to see what happened. But I was really young, so I wasn't.
Yeah. What is a ballet exam? Is it theory, or is it you have to do a performance?
You have to do a performance in front of people. It depends what type of dance exam it is, like how professional it is. So a lot of the time it'll be professional dance examiners that come from London and things like that. So it can be pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, I'm feeling overwhelmed just hearing it, and then I'm trying to think, being 6 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand wanting to be 6 and going, okay, I'm going to run away now.
Yeah, because I remember actually begging my ballet teacher. I was like, just let me move up to the next class without the exam. It's fine. I know I can do it. I know I can do it. And she was like, I'm sorry, but you need to set the exam. So yeah, that was fair enough.
Well, see, you're just a woman of many talents.
Well, I don't know. I wish I could play guitar better. I
Well,
thought when
that's something you can work on in lockdown. Take a few
yeah.
online lessons.
Yeah, I've been playing more. So hopefully I'll become better. I think when I first started learning guitar, I thought I was going to be like Slash within a couple of years, and then I actually quickly discovered it's very difficult.
I'm envious of any person who can play an instrument. I look at them like, I wish that was me.
I know, do you know what? I wish I could play instruments well. I feel like people either have a natural ability or they need to work really hard at it, and I'm one of those people that need to work really hard at it.
Yeah, it's amazing when you come across people who have that natural ear, where never touched an instrument in their life, but then they can hear something and perfectly play
Yeah.
it on the instrument you put in front of them. And I knew a friend like that, and he could listen to anything and then play it on the piano, and I just went, that's not fair.
No, like, why can't that be me?
That would be so nice, but
I
just
know.
it's almost like I don't think people would say this, but it's kind of like everybody has their own little superpower, just that one thing that they can just naturally do. And when I say singing is one, maybe even though you can learn to sing, there are just some people, it's like they come out the womb singing. And some people who come out the womb acting. So
I know, because I can never ever imagine Ariana Grande ever being a terrible singer. I feel
right.
like she's one of those ones that just came out and was like, I'm here, I can sing really well.
Yeah, and then have you had any formal training for your acting?
Yeah, so I went to theatre school in Glasgow, and it's just called UK Theatre School. And I got formal training from the ages of, let's say, 14 to 17. So I was there for a few years. And I did really like it. I felt it helped me with my confidence because a lot of the time you were just thrown into things. You had no choice but to do a dance routine in front of people. You had no choice but to sing in front of people, to dance in front of people, and act in front of people. So, I think it definitely prepared me for college when I did acting in college. Because I think had I not gone to UK Theatre School, I probably would have still been trying to find my confidence in college, which isn't great when you're trying to pass exams in college and find confidence at the same time. It's like, but that was the only formal training that I had.
So how do you deal with trying to learn to be an actor whilst living with autism? Because it's just, I feel like I'm already expanding the question. I apologize. But you're already going into something where you've got to learn everything. Now you've got to add that you have to learn things a little differently to everybody else. So what's that like?
Sorry, can I just ask what you mean? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I imagine going in and learning to be an actor already has its difficulties.
Right, okay, yeah.
Add autism to that.
Right, okay, yes.
What was that like?
Yeah, again, with the actual acting side of things, I'm absolutely fine. Like being on set, for lunch breaks, I'm usually by myself, but I explain to people before lunches that I sit by myself, not because I dislike them or because I don't want to interact with them, but it's just I find it easier just to be in my own space.
Right.
So, because I don't want to just walk away and have everyone feeling offended. But yeah, with the actual acting, it's fine, but I'm not I'm not overly keen on the social things that come with it. So like having to go to screenings and Q&As and
Right.
things like that. I find that really, really daunting because I'm there as myself. I'm being asked these questions as myself, and I almost feel naked. You know, it's like when you go up to a stage and you feel like you have no clothes on. It's like it's very awkward. But then, you know, if I was in a role where I had to go on stage and do a performance or do a Q&A, I'd be absolutely fine. But I have a lot of people saying, oh, but just pretend you're a character. But it doesn't work like that because it's all about your subconscious.
Right.
So subconsciously, I know I am there as myself, which then brings it to the conscious mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes total sense.
It's like it's a hard balance to try and, you know, gain enough confidence to be able to stand in front of people and speak. Because I still really struggle with that. Like with this, I'm fine because it's just you, inverted commas, that I'm speaking face to face with. But if you had like, you know, like 40 other people in the room with you, I'd be like, oh, I don't like this.
Yeah, I'm noticing that's a common thing among a lot of actors. I think about Bruce Willis. He only got into taking classes for acting because he had a lisp. He had a speech impediment. No, I don't think, no, it wasn't a lisp. It was a stutter. He had a stutter.
Oh, right. Okay.
And somebody told him, you should take acting lessons. It'll help you deal with those nerves that basically trigger your stutter. And he did. And now he's free of
Wow.
his stutter and he's a famous actor.
That's so interesting. I genuinely didn't know that. Because you would never know.
Yeah,
You know,
no.
you would never know.
But I think about that when there are certain actors like, in some cases, Bruce Willis, or I think of Harrison Ford, who, when they're in front of the screen, give these amazing performances. And then you see them in interviews, they're very quiet, very introverted. And you're just like, wow, you must be a good actor because it's night and day.
Yeah, it's totally different. Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like acting is like the ideal profession for you. You know, you don't have to think about what your answers are because they're written on a piece of paper for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. You know, you have your social cues written for you, so I don't ever need to worry about what the right or wrong way is to react to something. And I kind of view acting on a set as like a big joke that everyone's in on. You know, everyone is in on it. Everyone knows, you know, what's going to go down and what's going to happen.
Right.
So I like that aspect of it, you know, because I don't ever need to be paranoid of what to say or do next. I mean, I've always been terrible at improvisation. Improv acting is definitely my weakness because you have to think for yourself, you know, and think of especially comedy. Like I'm just so terrible at improv comedy. It's just I'm a shambles when it comes to that.
So possibly not doing any work with Taika Waititi then.
No, probably not. I mean, he is amazing, but no, probably not.
Have you encountered any problems being on a set or with a crew when you've had to say, I'm autistic? Have you felt anybody treated you differently?
Well, that is an interesting question because I wasn't diagnosed until I was 19, and I was also in denial about it for a long time. So
Okay.
so on a set, I wasn't really that open with it. But in fact, it's actually been the opposite. The only time I really told anyone is I have I have something called globophobia, which is like a fear of balloons, and I don't really have a fear of balloons, but I have a fear of them popping because along with autism are sensory issues. So along with that is loud noises for me and bright lights are like the two main ones that affect me. But for the Black Gloves, it was written in the script that I had to hold this balloon, and I was like, oh my God, here we go. I was freaking out, and at that point I was still really embarrassed about my diagnosis, and It was actually my mom that was like, no, you need to tell the director, you need to be honest with him. So he was great about it. Laurie Brewster was absolutely amazing about it. And he just put in a production note that no one touched the balloon on set because he knew I would just be anxious that it would pop. You know, if people were like throwing it about or whatever, I would just be constantly like on edge, like, please don't burst that, please don't burst that. So no one was allowed to touch it apart from me, which was really nice of him to do that.
That's amazing. It's so heartwarming to hear something like that. That it's just, it seems like such a nothing request, but it means so much to the person that it affects.
Absolutely.
Because any person who doesn't have your phobia, trying not to touch a balloon is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
I imagine everybody's like, oh, balloon, and there's the director going, don't touch the balloon.
But it was great because he didn't even tell anyone. You know, he just instructed them, don't touch the balloon, and that was it. Like he didn't tell them why, because he knew I was still embarrassed, because I told him that confidentially. So I thought it was just really nice, and that situation kind of gave me the confidence to go into every set with every director and say, look, this is the issue. Because, you know, every time I have done that, they've been nothing but really understanding and kind about it.
That's so good to hear. So which film was this?
This was The Black Gloves, which was directed by Laurie Brewster. It's like a film noir feature film. So it pays a homage to like Rebecca and Nosferatu and things like that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so
are you a fan of Nosferatu by any chance?
I love Nosferatu. It's one of my favorite horror films of all time. I love it.
Really? So like the original 1920s silent film?
Yeah.
Wow.
Love it. Because it was only a couple of years ago I went to a screening of Nosferatu with a live orchestra, and that was incredible. That was so breathtaking.
I don't know if you've seen this. I, unfortunately, being more in the reviewer community, come across a lot of people who love to give some rather ignorant 2 cents on films. And one is just that people say that the only good films are the ones that came out in the last 10 years. And it's a ridiculous statement. I'm like, there are just so many great films you're missing out on. And especially going back all the way to the 1920s and dealing with silent films. I only watched my first silent film, I think, not last year, but the year before that. And it was, I think it was The Man Who Always Laughed. I think that was the one that I watched.
I've not seen that. Is it good?
It was amazing. Considering this my first silent film, I was really blown away and I cried.
Wow.
And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to watch more. And so the following year I watched Nosferatu, which I didn't love, but I appreciated. And I'm like, cool, I've now finally watched it. But I was just kind of gobsmacked. I'm like, a silent film. I can't hear anything.
Yeah.
I'm just watching this story. I'm like, and I'm crying. Like, that's some damn good storytelling right there.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
And so it's a shame when people don't appreciate older films. Or then you have the flip side when people say that if your favorite film only came out in the last 10 years, you're not a movie fan. It's like,
I know. I know, because I think that's what I love about film is that, you know, it comes across to everyone differently, you know, and if someone's favorite film came out last month, cool. If it came out in the 30s, cool. You know, I don't judge anyone on when their favorite film came out, because it's all about the film itself and how it speaks to that person. And if it speaks to them on a deep level, then that's great. And to me, it's irrelevant when it came out.
I completely agree. I mean, films are going to touch everybody in a different way, and what means something to one person means something to another. But speaking of film, so the first film that I saw you in, obviously, was Matriarch, which, for those who don't know, is a little horror film that I I'm very bad at giving film synopsis because I'm someone who like wants to give so much information.
I'm the
and then,
exact same.
and then I'm like, no, but then I gotta spoil it. So
Yeah.
it's essentially about a husband and wife. Wife is pregnant, car stalls, and they end up with a little family who are just not that normal.
Yeah, they're a bit strange.
Indeed, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, uh-oh, car broke down. It's like, well, you know, this isn't going to end well. And I was, this is a little independent horror film, and I was absolutely blown away by how amazing it was. I'm actually finding in recent years that independent horror films are far exceeding blockbuster horror films. I don't know what's going on. I'm very happy about it though. I was watching this during my October marathon where I challenged myself to watch as many horror films as I can in the month of October.
Wow.
So my record is 205.
Wow, that is, clap for that. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. So this year I have to try and watch 206. And last year I do them alphabetically. So I got to the M's. I'm watching Matriarch, and I'd just been going through a bunch of really bad horror films. I'm like, I am so frustrated. Just give me one good one. And it happened. And I watched this, and I was both moved by it and impressed by it. And hence the reason why I've put it on my top 10 horror films of the decade, because I feel like you need to understand that if something is a bit more independent and has a lower budget than everything that blockbusters are given and can still pull everything off fantastically, that's worth so many extra points in my book. So how did you get your role in this wonderful little horror film that everybody needs to watch right away?
Thank you. Well, I was in my first ever short film called Eggshells, and it was a guy that worked on that was also going to be working on Matriarch, and he suggested to the producers that they audition me. So I auditioned like everyone else, you know, I didn't just get given the role. But I actually didn't feel like I was gonna even be considered for the role, genuinely, because I remember going into the audition, and you do something called an ident in auditions, and you either speak it or you have it on a bit of paper, but you say your name, your age, and your agent's name. And at that point, I didn't have an agent. So they saw that part was blank on the piece of paper, and they were like, oh, and who's your agent? And I was like, oh, I don't have one at the moment. And then it was just silence. And then they were just like, right, okay, well, let's start the audition. And immediately I was like, before I've even said a line from the script or done anything, I've not got it. So I was feeling like I'd done the best that I could, but I was kind of like, oh, well, they'll probably pick someone with, you know, representation. And then a few days later, I was informed I got the role. So it was a pleasant surprise.
I can imagine. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't seen the film. Again, go and watch it. I highly recommend it. I'm someone who, and this is not me being full of myself, it's a playful thing of why I go by the name The Movie Oracle, which is, for as long as I've known, I've been able to see a movie twist from a mile away. And there was a film with Viola Davis and Jennifer Lopez, and the name is completely gone from my mind. And I watched it. Well, I didn't watch it. My mom was watching it, and I walked in and she was watching it. She was only 5 minutes into it, and I walked in and I turned to her and I said, that character's not real. She's like, what? And I said, I'm pretty sure that character is just in her head. And she goes, you can't possibly know. She's like, have you seen this one? I said, no, I haven't. She said, why would you think that? And I said, there's just little subtle ways the script is written and the camera angles that are making me think this character isn't actually there. And she went, yeah, whatever. 2 hours later, she's screaming, you watched this film, didn't you? I'm like, no. She goes, how did you know that this character was a figment of her imagination? I'm like, it was just a guess. And she's like, You're lying to me. She still to this day does not believe me that I hadn't seen this, and I still haven't watched this film. So I just kind of catch those little techniques that kind of tell me what's going to come later on. But in terms of this film, which has a plot twist at the end, did not see it coming.
Good.
That's another reason why I love it so much. I was just going, like, as we're getting there, I had a suspicion, but I wasn't completely sold on it. And then it's revealed, and I went, that was bloody good. I'm like, that's how you do that. That's how you trick me. There's obviously a lot of, I'm not a fan of using the word nuances, but you obviously give a lot of really good levels in your performance that don't give away this twist, and it's hard to have to try to speak in code.
Yeah.
But how do you, as an actress, decide, okay, I have to give this performance, but I can't give away where the story is going to end up?
I don't know. I think it's a mix of intuition and the great directing from Scott Vickers. I had a lot of support from him because, you know, a lot of the time I was really unsure as an actor, you know, like when I'm doing this scene, how do I do it in such a way that isn't going to scream X, you know, spoiler. So, yeah, it was really hard, but I think what helped me was I learned throughout the process that I constantly thought of my character's backstory. And that helped me focusing more on that, on what the backstory of that character was. And I've now taken that process throughout the rest of my acting career. I now go into it going, right, focus on backstory and what the background of this character is rather than the future, you know, and what people are going to find out about whatever character it is, you know. Because I've gone into another film that's kind of twisty, but yeah, I just need to try and divert my focus from that and just concentrate on what that character is currently going through at that present moment.
I think you completely sold that, because as the story is moving along and we're kind of getting an idea of who your character is and why she's there, you can't not, like, even when you're not on screen, being like, what is happening with her? What has she been going through all these years?
Yeah.
And you definitely feel a lot of compassion for her, and then you reach the end, and I think that makes it a very bittersweet ending, where you feel very happy for Charlie Blackwood's character, but then you also feel very sad for your character. And it's just like, it's like that, I often say, like, horror films or thriller films that don't have a happy ending are often the best, and this one, like, cuts you right between the two. It's like you're somewhere between, yeah, I don't know how you go about it. I saw, I think you retweeted it, someone was saying, we need a Matriarch too. and I'm like, I don't know how you get a sequel out of that, but I wouldn't mind a prequel that focused on your character and how she got into her little situation.
Well, you know, ideas of that have been discussed when we were actually filming.
Wow.
People were like, oh, maybe a prequel might be an idea. So, yeah, who knows what's going on in Scott Vickers' brain, but
fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
I would definitely watch that, and if it requires crowdfunding, I'll pull out my credit card. It's all good.
Brilliant. Give me your money.
That's the slogan of independent films. Like, please give us your money.
Give us your money.
What was your favorite thing about working on Matriarch?
I know this is going to sound really cliched, but actually just working with the people that I worked with, because everyone was just so supportive and really kind, and that's important to have that connection with people. It's really important on set, because on set everything can be a bit manic and everyone does run about like headless chickens because so little time to complete whatever got scheduled for that day. So to have people that you really get on with and that you view as a kind of like a little family for those few weeks is really, really nice. And it was great to work with such experienced and talented people because I learned from them every single day, which was amazing because I felt really scared at first because it was, my first main role in a feature film. So I went into that and my first day being like, oh, this is so scary. I don't know how I'm going to cope with it. But everyone was just so nice. And I think a part of me was scared that I would be kind of looked down upon because, I hadn't had a lot of experience. And I think a part of me was scared that people were going to be like, oh, she's kind of less than us sort of thing.
Right.
But like literally no one was like that at all. Like we were all treated equally, all viewed equally, all felt equal to each other. And I feel like that's really important to have that on a set.
I think it ends up showing in the final product. And if I recall, that film was shot over a small amount of time, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I can't remember what Scott said. If we had like a big Hollywood budget, I can't remember if it was a month or 2 months filming. Crammed into a few weeks, crammed into a couple of weeks. And it was so fast paced. It got to the point where Scott would be playing back a take and he wouldn't even have time to say, yeah, that was really good. I liked X, Y, and Z. Let's move on. It got to the point where we just put his thumb up to say good, move on. And you would just have to turn around really quickly. So it was super fast paced. But I kind of liked that in a weird way. I kind of liked that adrenaline and being kept on your toes. It was good.
I suppose it would kind of give you less time to overthink things because you just got to get them done in the moment.
Yeah, that's true. And also when you're sitting there, because a lot of acting is actually just sitting about waiting. Like you just spend a lot of hours just sitting there, and sometimes when you've been sitting for so long for hours and then you get called, you just feel so deflated. You just feel like, oh, I need to actually muster up the energy to do this. But because like this film was the total opposite, I was like super busy constantly, and that was great. I really liked that. I enjoyed that.
So maybe if you were ever to work on like a really big Hollywood film and it's like, cool, this is going to take 6 months, it's just like, oh boy.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh, here we go.
So maybe you'll be a bit hesitant the day you get a call from like Marvel going, hey, we've got a role for you.
No, I mean, that's the thing. Like, if the opportunity ever came, I would definitely take it just to see what happens and see what it's like. But it's not my main goal,
Right. Based on what I've seen, it seems like a little bit more of the work you do is a little bit more on the side of the dark and the macabre type things. So is that your wheelhouse, or did it just end up that way?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. It's kind of my thing, if you want to call it that. I really like playing characters that have a lot of emotional turmoil and that have some really messed up backgrounds. I feel like those are the most fun characters to play. But I have played characters that are normal in society's terms that haven't really had a lot happen to them.
Right.
So yeah, but I feel like the ones that have a lot of emotional turmoil are the best to play because there's so much to play with. But I think I would love to play like a proper psychotic character, like like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, like something like that, just totally like properly crazy. I think I would enjoy.
Just completely unhinged off the rails.
Just like absolutely no empathy. I would love to play a character that had no empathy.
Those are that I imagine is also a bit of a challenge because if you're someone who genuinely feels emotions you now have to try to train yourself to turn those off.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be so challenging. I just love challenging work.
I love that. So how do you feel about the horror genre as a film lover and as an actress?
I'm a bit of a wimp when it when it comes to watching horror, but yeah. Well, no, I'm not too bad. I guess I'm not overly keen on horrors that are just filled with gore from beginning to end,
Right.
with no substance and no interesting storyline. You know, I'm not really a fan of them. But I love psychological horrors. So James Wan has to be my favorite horror director, probably.
Really?
I think he's amazing. Like,
How was he?
I know I completely forgot. But yeah, so as you know, he directed Insidious, The Conjuring, Saw, and those are all films I really love because I feel he plays with your mind so well and he executes it perfectly. Every single time I've seen one of his films, I just get chills. I think he's so incredible.
I completely agree with you. James Wan is definitely one of my favorite horror directors and writers of this day and age.
Yeah.
And probably one of my favorite James Wan films is Dead Silence.
Yeah, I actually watched that for the first time like last month. I really liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one thing where he did something different where everybody is like, cool, let's try and use a lot of sound effects, amp up the scares, whereas he went, cool, let's take away the sound.
Yeah.
And it was that kind of the self-deprivation type thing, and it's like, oh, what do you do if you can't hear anything? And I imagine it's kind of like watching for a brief moment, you might have a little bit of understanding of what it might be to be like deaf.
Yeah.
Not obviously we can't completely put ourselves in the shoes of someone who is, but you just get that moment. It's like, imagine if just one day all went off and it's like, okay, yeah, I'd be a little scared. And in those moments when that slow fade out of sound and just stops, and I'm like, okay, I'm a little terrified.
Yeah. Yeah, I did really like that film. But yeah, I think he's just amazing because I remember seeing The Conjuring for the first time in the cinema when it came out, and it was petrifying. It was absolutely petrifying, and there was very little blood, very little gore. Because it was all to do with the music and the visuals and that kind of Super 8 film type, and it was just, even thinking about it, I'm like, oh, it's so creepy. Yeah, it's so creepy.
Yeah, he has I think it's a very unique approach that he has, where a lot of people, not even just in horror films, but I think in films in general, really want to put everything on the screen and give it to you all at once, and that kind of, I think, loses effect pretty fast. And I love that he has moments where, especially in the start of the film, where the girls have their each individual experience and they're going, there's someone right there, and they're like, well, we can't see them. Well, I can. And instead of showing you from the child's perspective, it's from everybody else. It's like, okay, she's clearly losing her mind. It's like, no, she is seeing something, it's just it's not letting the rest of you see it. And I think that's a very clever concept, that kind of, that moment where if you are going through something and it's like, am I crazy or am I actually... And I guess when you say that you love to play characters who are a little bit more emotionally unstable, horror would give you a lot more to work with because there are so many levels in a horror performance.
Yeah, definitely. I know it wasn't a James Wan film, but I watched Hereditary for the first time a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
I think what I loved about that film was that a lot of horror films, they reveal what's going on to the viewers, but not to the characters. But I loved in Hereditary, the viewers were just as confused as the characters. You didn't find out what was going on, until the character did. You went through all that with them. You went through the confusion with them of what is going on, what is happening. And I loved that about it, and I felt it was really refreshing and really different, because like I say, a lot of the time you watch horror films and you go, oh yeah, we all know that there's like a phantom or a ghost or whatever running about your house, but you guys don't know that. But in Hereditary, you were scratching your head going, what is happening? Like, we haven't been told. What?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. I think it's a talent for any director and an actor who is able to convey the story and make the audience feel like they're part of the story and they're
Yeah.
experiencing it at the same time. It's I know Hereditary is a bit of a controversial film,
Yeah.
but I think anything I think if it gets a lot of people talking, it's done its job,
It's good.
right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, if it gains recognition, then they've done it.
I mean, love or hate it, I think there are a lot of people who were shocked by at least one scene in that film, and everybody unanimously was not prepared for it, seeing it coming.
Yeah.
If you've seen it, you know what it is. If you
Yeah.
haven't seen it, I'll just say telephone pole. Uh,
Yeah.
I remember you may have seen when people were making those memes. It's my plans 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of people were like using like horror ones
Yeah.
and all this stuff, and it was funny because obviously I follow a lot of people that I interact with who just love really messed up stuff. So it's like
Yeah.
everybody's trying to outdo each other and how messed
Yeah.
up we can go.
Love
So
it.
one of them was Hereditary, where it's like my plans 2020, and 2020 was the telephone pole.
Love that. It's so true.
My one I picked The Mist. So
Yeah.
I specifically picked the ending of The Mist, and as soon as I post that, all my friends are like, "Oh, this got dark," and I'm just like, "Do I win? Did I win for being the most disturbing?" And they're just like,
Give you a prize.
"Yeah." Everybody's just kind of like, "Okay, not," and they're like, "Wow, I thought the Hereditary one was bad," and the horror seemed to be perfect for that. There was
Yeah.
one for the original Pet Cemetery.
Yeah.
And so it's like my plans, and as the little boy, and then 2020 is the truck.
Yeah. That's funny. I love that.
I love that films give us so much to work with for our own creative purposes and our own amusement. Maybe they'll come up with one for Matriarch, my plans 2024.
Hopefully. Hopefully.
I might just go and make it myself. Might do that after this.
Yes. Yes.
So, as acting is your now preferred career, what are your goals for this career that you've chosen?
Just to keep acting and to undertake challenging roles, continue to do that and to inspire myself and to hopefully inspire viewers as well. I feel it's really important being involved in film that can convey really important messages. Because I feel not just acting, but art in general can totally mold someone's perspective and completely change the way they view a certain subject or the world in general. And I feel like that's super important. And I think to be involved in something like that is just, yeah, it's amazing. So I want to continue to do that.
As you said about films telling important stories and there are all these important roles, I'd been reflecting since you talked about being autistic, and I'd been thinking about how autism is reflected in film and television. It's not very common, and when it is, I think they tend to all depict the same thing, which is someone very low functioning, very hypersensitive to sound, social interaction. And so I immediately think of like Mercury Rising was probably the first film I ever saw that depicted someone with autism. And then in recent years, I think about The Good Doctor on TV, which on top of having your main character who has autism, he also has savant syndrome. And a lot of films like to depict autistics with savant syndrome, which I actually found out statistically is like 0.001% is a thing.
Yeah.
But all these films just want to say that, okay, if a person is autistic, you can't really interact with them and they can't deal with this, but they're also super, super, super smart and they can like crack secret codes for the government. Obviously, that's not realistic.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. Like in high school, I was not academic at all. Like I failed pretty much all of my exams, you know. So my last year of school, we do something in Scotland called hires. So you have your intermediate levels in
Mhm.
third, fourth year of high school, and I passed all of them like fine. But then I got to fifth year and did my hires and completely bombed them. And I wasn't understanding what the questions in the exams were asking me to do, because to me I could interpret them in many different ways. So in my head, I just had to guess which one they were asking me out of the many different options I had. And 9 times out of 10, I would get it wrong. And for a long time, like throughout high school and even after high school, I felt stupid, because I was like, how are my friends able to barely study and pass all these exams? And I was studying loads. I was staying up till all hours in the morning, and I was failing all of them. And you're right, you know, in films, autistic people are portrayed to be like super, super intelligent but have no social skills. And that can be the case. You know, I'm not disputing that, saying that there's nobody out there like that. There are. But I feel autistic traits in women aren't portrayed at all. I feel like, you know, like with Rain Man, it's
Yeah.
male. You know, I
Yep.
feel like with a lot of the films portraying autism, it's males, and I understand that because it's more obvious in males. But I would like to see autism in women portrayed more, because I find it more complex. You know, because they do, on the surface, they do seem, I don't want to use the term normal, but they do seem to have like an atypical brain.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting to see a film kind of delve beneath that surface and actually find out what they're truly feeling, what they're truly thinking in a certain situation, even though they're not showing it.
Right.
So you know how like a lot of the time people use voiceovers and things to have what's going on in somebody's head. I'd quite like that, but for an autistic female, because people would then be able to see for themselves, oh, she looks like she's coping fine, but this voiceover is going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, you know, of like, what do I say? What do I do? Oh, you know, and I feel like that would really open a lot of people's eyes as to what it's actually like, you know, the reality.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. It's a shame that it doesn't happen, because I think I can only think of one time I've seen an actress play an autistic character, and that was in Elementary. But again, she was also extremely smart. She was a scientist or engineer, and she'd created this new high-tech thing, and she wasn't low functioning. She was somewhere in the middle where she could interact with people, but she wasn't very good at being social, and she wasn't good at eye contact, and but she could still talk and answer questions, and just if she felt herself get overwhelmed, she kind of just walked away without saying anything. I felt like there was a bit of authenticity in there, but then of course I'm like, but then again, you had to make her a genius again.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that trope came back. It seems like they kind of show that because all these characters are geniuses, it offsets the problems. It's like, well, those don't matter because they're great in all these other things, so you know they're going to have an easy time at that. It's like, but you got to get past the bad stuff to get to the good stuff. And my brother is he's a teacher's aide at a I don't know what word, because I know in America they say elementary school. Here we say primary school for when it's in your young. Oh, good. There we go. Learned something today. So he works at a primary school, and he's a teacher's aide. So he takes care of all the special needs children. So whether it be mental disability or physical disabilities, and he's been doing that for about 20 years.
Wow.
And so he's definitely taken care of a lot of autistic children in his time. And when I mentioned The Good Doctor, I'm like, oh, you're going to watch this show? He's like, absolutely not. I said, why is that? And he says, I deal with autistic children all day, every day. I don't need to go home and watch it on the TV. And then he said, also, it's a load of crap. He says, I've never once encountered a child who was anything like they are on the TV, and he says, and they're all different.
Exactly.
He says you're never going to find one autistic child that's the same as the next.
Yeah.
He said he says, this is how he explained it to me, and this is how I've learned to understand a bit more about autism, was when he said you never go in with a plan of how to deal with someone who's autistic because it's different for every single child. He says, I have to learn on the fly what is right for this child and what they need, because it's never going to be the same for the next person the next year.
Exactly.
And I can only imagine what it's like being the person who has to deal with that and be like, well, you think it's hard, imagine being in my head.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, I have to feel sympathy for parents or even people like my brother who deal with it all day, every day, and not just one person, but it's multiple people. And then you go and you look at film and television kind of giving you this sunshine rainbows version of it, and it certainly seems to be doing a lot of people a disservice.
Yeah, well, I think that's where the balance in filmmaking is difficult when portraying autism, because, like you say, it's such a broad spectrum. Like, you know, it's such a massive umbrella with loads of different traits, and you know, you have your typical common traits, and that's really all filmmakers can play off of in a way, because you know it's common. So you know, they'll have multiple autistic people that will watch a film with an autistic character and go, okay, yeah, I can relate to that. But there's also many others with many other traits that look at that and go, I can't relate to that. So there must be something wrong with me.
Right.
So I feel like it can help people, but like you say, do them a disservice at the same time. Because I used to feel like that when I first got my diagnosis. I thought, well, why am I not Einstein? Why am I not like this super maths genius that can, you know, do all these equations on the wall? Because I was terrible at maths. I was, you know, absolutely shocking at maths. So immediately I thought, there's something wrong with me. You know, I didn't think, oh, it's just because I have different traits. It was automatically there's something wrong with me, because all I've ever seen are these geniuses, you know, that invented new things and, you know, done all these really big, amazing things with their lives. And I'm just sitting here feeling like a little cabbage, kind of like, oh, what's going on? But then as, you know, I came to terms more with my diagnosis, I was then able to research it for myself and realized I just have different traits. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me, or, you know, that I can, I don't know the phrase that I'm trying to use, but like, you know, that there are many traits that I can relate to, but there's also a lot that I'm like, nah, I don't see that in myself. But that's just the way it is. But I feel like that needs to be more obvious for people. You know, like, I feel like people should be told, yes, these are common traits, and this is the way we've portrayed an autistic person. But if you don't relate to that, that's okay. Because I never had someone say to me, that's okay. Because it just wasn't that known. But I've just learned myself that it is okay.
It's so heartbreaking to hear that, because I know that I know a few reviewers who are autistic, and it's like, well, I don't see your face, but looking at social media, it's like, well, you have better grammar skills than I do, and you obviously can articulate what you see in a film very well. And so it just, again, goes to show that it is such a broad spectrum, and there seems to still be such a stigma with saying someone is autistic, because they immediately think what they've seen on screen and don't think that maybe a person can be like you are right now and capable of having a very normal conversation.
Yeah.
But so obviously depicting these things as authentically as possible is important. Do you think it's important that they cast more actors and actresses who have autism to play autistic roles, or do you think that should be open to anybody?
I think it should be open to anybody. I'm all for whoever is the best at playing that role. And if that happens to be an autistic person, fine. If it happens to be an atypical brain, and that's fine as well. You know, to me, it's like as long as they get the job done and they do it well and they do it realistically, I don't really care who's doing it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because as well, it's a risk for a lot of directors to maybe take on people with autism, because they might have been fine at the audition. They might have been able to do a self-tape where they're just looking at their webcam, you know,
Right.
doing a script that they've been sent for an audition. But then you put them on a set with, you know, 50 plus crew members, all the cast, maybe 4, 5, 6 cameras, and they might fall to pieces, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So as a director, I would imagine they would also have to be very careful if they are taking on board an autistic person. And I think that's a big part of why I was scared to speak up about it, because I was kind of thinking I might actually lose work from this, because directors might look at that and go, oh, well, we won't know how she reacts to having multiple cameras and crew and whatever. But then by the time I got my diagnosis and I became confident speaking about it, I was like, well, I've already done a few films, and it would have circulated by now if I was a pain to work with, or, you know, if I was having meltdowns or whatever, you know, like people would already be speaking about that and know about that. So I felt pretty safe to start talking about it. But certainly at the time I was very nervous, because
I can imagine
this could potentially end a career that I've barely started.
Yeah, so ultimately you'd hope that at least if anybody chooses to take on that role, that they'd at least do the time and the research to get it right.
Yeah, or, you know, at least if they wanted to accept that actor for a role, at least try and put them in a trial scenario where you have like loads of cameras and crew and everything to like, you know, so that they know how it feels and to see how they cope with that. I mean, I understand that would take a lot of time, probably a lot of money as well, and effort, but I feel like if you're that passionate about having that person in a role, then you would do that. Whereas I was really lucky. The first time I was on a set, I was very nervous, but I was able to cope with my surroundings, and I realised I was able to block the camera and crew out. I was, you know, very present. So I'm lucky in that sense.
Oh, that's good. I know that there are a lot of films where obviously, depending on the subject, they'll have someone who is a professional in that field come on and be like the guide to say, well, here's what's right and here's what's inaccurate. Perhaps they could benefit from, if there is a director or a writer who wants to tell a story about someone with autism, speak to a professional, someone who is autistic, to get an idea of how to accurately write that kind of a role.
Well, that's the thing. I feel research, no matter what the subject matter is, I feel research is key. You know, whether that's characteristics or social issues, if you're, you know, doing a historical piece, you know, research is so important. And I feel like if you have researchers keeping people historically accurate, then like, say, why can't you have a psychologist even, or an autistic person to come in and say, well, this is how I would react in a situation like that, or, you know, I feel that would be very important and beneficial.
I agree that that it is important. I think that they seem to be selective on what they choose to put research efforts into. If it is, as you say, a historical film, then they will put in a little bit of extra work. Or if the person is fortunately still alive, like with Hidden Figures, ask them, it's like, so what was this? But then, of course, they took a lot of unfortunate creative liberties with that film that did not happen in reality. But it seems to be like anything that's not like big, they don't seem to put as much time and effort into it. Obviously, this is not even remotely the same scale, but I think of the fact that I'm a licensed massage therapist.
Wow,
and
that's amazing.
Thank you. And I get very easily triggered when I see a film or a show depict massage, and I'm kind of just like gritting my teeth going, you wouldn't do that, you wouldn't do that. And to the point where I've even done a reaction video because it's in good fun, but it's also, I want to say, like, there is actual training and skill that goes into that, and you're basically just letting these actors just come in and go, cool, I'll do this, and that's calling it a day, and that's not it. So I'm watching these films, I'm going, oh my god, did they really just do that? They could have killed somebody. Because nobody took the time to go, oh, maybe there is an actual technique and things that you do and you don't do, and that should really apply to anything. I think if you take the time to write a script, that sometimes the research is worth it, and sometimes Googling is not that hard.
Well, exactly, because a lot of research falls on the actors as well, and I take so much time to research, my character, and especially a career that they're doing, maybe any physical illnesses that they're going through. I will actively seek out people who have been through that so that I can get it accurate, because I don't want to ever almost like make a mockery of people with certain illnesses or certain careers. I wouldn't want anyone watching that and going, that's so far from reality, why is she doing that, why is she saying that? I would never ever want to do that. I would want to get it so dead on so that everyone can look at it and go, yeah, that's right, that is accurate. Because I feel like a lot of actors and filmmakers, by kind of only putting half their energy into research, it's like they're impressing the people that aren't in that field, and that's, whereas I kind of want to make everyone feel like it's correct and it's the correct way that it's being done. I wouldn't want to be one of those massage therapists and then have some saying that's so wrong. So, like, if I got accepted a role who had that career, I would actively speak to massage therapists and be like, right, okay, this is the scene, this is what I have to do, how would you do it? And I would pretty much train myself, as they've been trained, but like condensed, because you've only got a certain amount of time. But I certainly try my absolute best to get it right, because I feel that's just respectful, and I feel it's important.
It's so nice to hear that, because I think that there are some actors who, obviously there are some who are very method and definitely will go to lengths to understand something, and then you have the flip side where it's like some who are just like, no, I don't feel like I have to do that, I'm just gonna do the performance, and then you end up with maybe someone like me who's screaming about a massage.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, like, when it comes to acting, I'm, the actual emotional side of things, I just kind of perform and I just do it. I don't ever do method acting, because I feel like when taken too far, it can be really dangerous for your mental health and sometimes even your physical health. And look what happened to poor Heath Ledger. He literally went insane after playing Joker because he went full on method. So, because he wrote in his diary every single day as the Joker, and I don't know.
He was also someone who was dealing with, he had a lot of anxiety and depression, and the unfortunate thing about him is I think he would have been fine if he just had better communication with his doctors. Because you go to one doctor and you get put on one bit of medication, go to another, but you don't say you're on another thing, and next thing you know, you're mixing meds that you shouldn't be, and then you're not here anymore.
But I mean, like, even Tom Hanks now has diabetes from Castaway, because he, obviously films aren't usually filmed in chronological order, so he gained weight really quickly for certain scenes and lost weight really quickly for certain scenes, and because he did this like really quick diet and fluctuating his weight, he then ended up with diabetes permanently from that. And I feel like when it does damage to your physical and mental health, that's for me, it's not worth it. But when it comes to kind of physical things, your career as a massage therapist, you know, I feel like that's fine. That's not doing anyone any damage. You know, it's not doing yourself any harm. But
Yeah.
with the emotional side of things, I do just view it as like a light switch, on,
Yeah.
off, go home, try and forget about, you know, what it is, especially if it's been a really intense day. It's easier just to try and block it out, because it can really you know, wear on you if you keep thinking about it.
Yeah, I think of like Christian Bale, who has either lost significant amount of weight for one role and then gained a severe amount of weight for another role. He's altered his body for so much, and I just don't believe that that could ever be good for you physically or mentally. I also don't think it's entirely necessary. I was saying to someone the other day, I said, if they could CGI off Ralph Fiennes' nose to play Voldemort,
Exactly, yeah.
they can CGI Christian Bale to look skinny.
Yeah.
And we've seen with was it Russell Crowe and John Lithgow with playing Fox News guy whose name has completely evaded me, but it's not like it's a name I want to remember anyway.
Yeah.
That, you know, they opted for fat suits. Gary Oldman playing Churchill. It's the same thing. It's like, well, you're seeing that you can do it effectively with prosthetics and stuff like that. You don't need to put that much strain on your body for for maybe 6 months of filming, and then you go home and it's like, great, now what do I do with all this extra fat?
Yeah, exactly. I know, like, you know, I'm all for people losing weight or gaining weight for their own health reasons and, you know, for benefits, but you know, I don't believe in doing it solely for a role to give like a shock value for people, because like you say, you can easily do things with CGI and makeup, and you know, it's all very advanced nowadays. I mean, I can kind of understand it, you know, back in the 70s and 80s when, you know, that sort of thing wasn't really realistic, you know, when it came to makeup and CGI, but nowadays I feel there's no excuse for it.
Yeah, I especially don't think it's wise anybody doing anything strenuous to their bodies when we've got a virus roaming the globe, affecting people in a number of ways. And I'm only just still, we're 7, 8 months into this, and I'm only still realizing just how big the impact COVID is having on everyone. Even those who don't have it or don't know anybody who has it, it's still a huge impact. I, for myself, I'm meant to be booked in for a second surgery, and I've had that cancelled because COVID has spiked where I'm living, and so all surgeries have been cancelled. And so it's just one of those things, you don't really think about it until you're in that moment. You're like, wow, this really is a domino effect. And we've seen the effect that it's having on the film industry. Cinemas closing all around the world, films being constantly pushed back. I still think that it's a little bit, I don't want to be harsh here, but I think that's a little bit egotistical for Hollywood to be promising films to be coming out in August or things like that, when it's like, come on now. This ain't slowing down by August, especially not in the US. And so it's one thing when you see that things that have already been filmed, and now they're just going, okay, we'll opt for streaming. That's one thing. But then I have to ask, how is this affecting actors like yourself with trying to get work in the time of COVID?
Yeah, well, this is the issue. I was due to film a feature film in May, so that's obviously been pushed back as well. And yeah, it's difficult because realistically, there's not really a lot you can do. I mean, I still know people in Scotland, actors in Scotland, that have still been doing self-tape. So I don't know if productions are maybe planning to start not the filmmaking process, but just to start the script writing process for much later on next year, which is fair enough. But I just kind of sit there and go, nobody really knows what's going to happen with this virus. You know, it might spike again in winter. It might or it might just die out. You know, it's still very up in the air without a vaccine anyway. It's still all very up in the air. And yeah, it's hard because I also have a second job. I work part-time in a security company. And I'm an event steward, so I work at, there's a venue in Scotland called the Hydro. So, you know, I work in these big entertainment complexes, which of course are filled with thousands of people. So they're not going to open up anytime soon either. So that's immediately, excuse me, my two jobs, you know, done for now. So it's hard to like keep distracting yourself, because that's all I can do. I can only distract myself by, you know, going out on hikes and playing guitar and reading and all that kind of stuff. And for me,
and TikTok.
And TikTok, exactly, and TikTok, of course. But how can I forget TikTok? So those are like short-term, temporary fixes. But acting is like my serotonin. You know, it's like the good endorphins, you know, that get released in me when I'm acting. And to have that come to a grinding halt is really hard. It's really difficult. Because yeah, it seems like the arts in general has just kind of collapsed at the moment, with everything going on. So yeah.
Yeah, especially obviously when you're trying to build a career and it's like you're gaining momentum, and then this thing comes out of nowhere that nobody has any control over, and no one can really. Okay, there are some people we can blame, but for the majority, it's like, what can you do when you try everything and things still happen? It's like, well, okay, these are the things that have to happen in the meantime for us to try and survive.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately that there are side effects, and I can only imagine the kind of deflated state you must be in, that it's not just one job you've lost, but two right now.
Yeah.
It
is really hard, because I know the pandemics, you know, hit everyone really hard, and turned a lot of lives upside down. And I'm not going to lie, when I was reading the questions you were going to be asking me and thinking of the answers, I all of a sudden just cried, because it was the first time that I'd properly thought about my career, for months, because I didn't actually realize that I'd been blocking it out, because, you know, subconsciously I just felt it was too painful to deal with. You know, so I just pretended like all the films I'd done, all the filming I'd done, that didn't happen. Let's just pretend that wasn't a thing. So the past couple of days has been like the first time where I've really thought about it, and I've gone, it's just hit me, and it's been like, this is all stops. Like you were saying, I was really gaining momentum and coming up to speed, and then it's just all, you know, flatlined for the time being. And I think, though, the motivation that's, you know, that I'm having, though, is thinking of all the great films and scripts that are going to come of this, because everyone's had so much time on their hands to write new scripts, write new stories. So once everything does gain some form of normality, there will be hopefully a lot of work for actors, which will be amazing, but it's just hard at this moment to like think that far ahead.
Yeah. I'm so sorry to hear that it made you cry.
No, don't, because like,
it's horrible.
No, you know, honestly, don't be sorry, because, you know, it was a revelation to me, because I didn't even realize I was blocking it out until I was like thinking about these questions, and I was like, I've actually just been like a mental and emotional block. I've just been like, let's not deal with that. But as a person, you need to deal with it, because everyone needs to deal with it. And it's important that you learn these things about yourself and the process you go through with dealing with a pandemic, because whoever thought this scenario would happen, you know. So it's important that you learn, you know, more things about yourself as a person.
Yeah, it's definitely something also to think about the ramifications on people who have this as a career, and also people who are not currently sitting on, you know, millions of dollars that they've been making off their films over the last few decades.
Yeah.
But you think about, you know, people who lost a job, and then it's like, cool, well, the government is going to reimburse you, or your employers are going to pay you like your sick leave and all that stuff in the meantime to get you through. It's like, okay, businesses seem to kind of have some kind of a plan, whether it was intended for pandemics or not. There's something to do in the meantime. But then you think about the entertainment industry. It's been a battle here in Australia where the entertainment industry is going, okay, so we're not qualified for being put on these support payments. There's nothing to help them in the interim, and theaters are shut down, everything is closed. They're like, so we can't get work, so we can't earn a living, and now the government doesn't want to support us. And so I have to think about that it's just that the pandemic has come and it makes you realize that there are so many careers, whether it's, especially because this is the topic, so especially entertainment industry, but then there are other careers as well, where there isn't a fail-safe to deal with something like a pandemic. Because again, why would you ever think, how do we take care of all the actors in the world when a virus breaks out? That's not something you think, how do we pay them their royalties, and what happens when they die? Do we send the royalties to their families? You think about stuff like that, but not what happens when we can't make films. The studios and the backlots and everything shuts down. And it's a shame when I see, I think for the most part people are understanding, and anyone who's like decent film lovers are just happy to kind of sit back and be like, we'll be here when it happens and ready to throw our money back into the industry. But then of course you have some people like, no, I want it now. It's like, now's not going to happen.
Exactly. I know it's a very awkward and just a dark situation, I feel. You know, it's just I know, I mean, a lot of people in the industry in Scotland are lucky in some ways because, they're filmmakers, actors, crew, whatever, full time. But a lot of us do actually have second jobs, and a lot of them can work from home, which is great. But like you say, there's a lot of them that don't have that net, that safety net. So it's like, well, what can they do? You know, it's hard,
Yeah, I feel like hopefully maybe the industry worldwide will create some type of a safety net, because it's not like this is the first pandemic to ever hit Earth. So, and any medical professional will say it'll happen again. It will just be something else, but it'll happen one day. And so you have to think, well, being in this day and age of everything, maybe now's the time to start thinking of how can we create a safety net in the future for people like yourself and others in this industry, so that kind of that creative spark doesn't kind of start to fizzle out. And I'm just like, I'm trying to like, what could we do? I think about Evanescence released a music video this year, and the whole thing was filmed in isolation. You know, each person did their own thing in their own home, and then obviously sent the footage, and it was all edited together, and it looked like a proper cohesive music video. And you'd hope that something like that can be done, but then again, I'm thinking, I think there's a lot of actors in Hollywood who don't really want to be filming films inside their own home and be like, here's a tour of my house.
Here's my house. No, that's very true.
That might set off the stalkers just a little bit extra.
I don't think that would be safe for them.
In the meantime, we all get to, I think a lot of people, not me, a lot of other people are watching a lot of new stuff, everything that's coming out onto streaming services. I'm more prone to going back to the stuff that I've watched a million times.
I'm the same.
So what do you have a favorite film, or at least one that you've been watching a lot during lockdown?
Oh, it's so difficult because there's so many films that I love for different reasons.
Mm.
So I love What's Eating Gilbert Grape for acting.
Ooh.
Because Leonardo DiCaprio, well, anyone who knows me knows he's my favorite actor of all time. And I think his performance is just breathtaking, along with Johnny Depp and Juliette Lewis and Darlene Cates. Like, all of them in that
Mm.
film are just outstanding. But it's quite a heavy film, so I feel
Right.
like with today's times, it's maybe not the best thing to watch.
Maybe
So
not.
my go-to films for a good laugh is probably Airplane and Superbad. They're like
Okay.
they're my two favorite comedy films probably. I just love Airplane for like that kind of stupid humor,
Yeah.
that over the top, like ridiculous. Um, so I'm trying to think of any. Oh yeah, and anything with Melissa McCarthy. I think she's amazing. I absolutely love her.
I just found another reason to love you. I don't get when I see people go off about Melissa McCarthy and they say she's a terrible. I think she's
I
great.
think she's great. I think she's fantastic. Her comedic timing is genius.
Yeah, she is one of those people who will just go completely in, no shame, no
Yeah.
nothing. It's giving it her all. And I think she's also such a lovely person in
Mhm.
general.
Yeah.
But I've never been disappointed with a Melissa McCarthy film. Even when
Yeah.
people are like, that film was terrible, I'm like, I loved it. I laughed. I don't get
Yeah.
what your problem is.
Exactly. No,
But
I think she's hilarious. She's so funny and um she's just so big with everything she does. You know, she's just so out there and fun. And I think people like that are just a breath of fresh air. And it's something that
mm,
I, as an actor, I'm envious about. You know, I wish I had that screen presence of everyone look at me and laugh at what I'm doing, you know, because I don't have that on screen presence, which is fine because everyone has their own little niche, but
right.
she exudes that, you know, the big personality and the funniness. And I feel especially with COVID, the COVID situation, that's really important to have just now.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping that obviously, how do I say? I'm trying to get my words out and I'm
Yeah,
struggling.
that's okay.
Mostly because it's quite freezing right now because we're in the middle of winter over here.
Oh no.
Um, opposite seasons and hemispheres
Yep.
and all that jazz. Um, I think some of us, as much as we say we love films and we love cinema, whether it be we love what they make us feel or we love it as an art form, I think it's up until COVID happened, a lot of us realized we'd been taking it for granted.
Yeah.
Uh, Going to see movies is a privilege, and also underestimating the work that goes into a film, whether it be the crew who make it or the actors who bring the story to life. And you don't really appreciate that until suddenly you get that notification from your cinema going, "P.S. We're closed. There are
Yeah.
no films to watch."
That's so true. I mean, I think that's another positive I'm hoping that will come from the pandemic is that once the arts can start resuming normally again, is that people will have a deeper appreciation for it in general. Because I feel like I want to say to people that have been taking it for granted, I want to say to them, like, imagine going home and having no books to read, no poetry, no paintings, no magazines, no TV, no films, no nothing of that kind in
Mm.
your life without that completely. And that's what it would be like if the arts was completely obliterated. And I feel like for anyone that would be a really hard thing to imagine your life without, you know, because a
Mm.
lot of people do rely on it as, you know, either for entertainment purposes or escapism, you know, whatever their reasons are, it's still in some way relevant in their lives.
Yeah.
But because people have grown up with it, it's always been there, just kind of there.
Yeah.
And now that, like you say, cinemas have been closed, everyone's gone, everyone's panicked. I mean, like, oh, this is what life is like without all of that. This is weird, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a sad state that we're in. I'm hoping that people get to have a bit more of an appreciation of films, especially right now. I know that so many of us are just dying to get back to the cinema, like we're just
Yeah.
counting down the days till they open back up.
Yeah.
I mean, even then I'm quite picky. Mostly it's for financial reasons, but I'm just like I have to really have a good feeling about a movie before I go, and if I unfortunately end up leaving disappointed, it's a shame. But
Yeah.
I think honestly one of the things I miss the most is going to events at my cinema that were called Flicks with the Chicks,
Okay.
and it was always in gold class. And so well, actually they had it in all the cinemas, but I became a bit of a gold class snob. I'm like, yes, I will happily sit in the recliner with a glass of champagne and a 3-course meal. Thank you very much. But it was like I'm not a social person. I actually in the real world I have no friends. I don't interact with anybody. So everything I do is online. And because I'm so out of practice, like you see me speaking to you now, but believe me, if this was like legitimately face to face, I would be really extra slurring my words and being very anxious and sweating through my clothes. And because I'm so out of practice, I get very nervous also about going to the cinema, and I'm like, please don't let anybody sit next to me. Please don't let anybody sit next to me. And so I was kind of okay when they're like, cool, COVID, you got to keep one seat between everybody. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you sit over there. I sit over here. Because, you know, it was always kind of, as much as I'm like, I really want to see that film, it was daunting to be like, oh God, I have to go and be around people. I'm also someone who gets really easily irritated, and there's always that one person who's rustling with something.
I hate that. Or on their phone. Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah, anytime I have a bad experience and I have to do a review, I pretty much start my review with, here's the bad experience that I just had. And people going, why did you do them? Like, it's my channel and I can do what I want, that's why.
Yeah.
But I ended up becoming a big fan of these Flicks with the Chicks events, which were mostly either about they would pick films that were coming out that were either centered around it's a female central film, or it was directed by a woman and then also is about a woman. So it was meant to be very catered to women. Although then sometimes there would be something like Love, Simon and Rocket Man. I'm just like, don't know where that fits into that category, but I love the film, so I'm happy either way. And you're just with a whole bunch of people that you don't know. And I quickly started to get really into them. Nobody so much as interaction, but everybody's there to just have a good time and relax. People are drinking their cocktails. We're all eating the food that's being brought to us. We get gift bags. And you get to win a little door prize. I've actually won twice.
Wow, well done.
I know. It happened when I found a 4-leaf clover, so I 100% believe that they are lucky now.
Amazing.
I'm convinced of it. I found it like, oh, this is great. Took it with me and I'm like, I won after a year of waiting. So I'm like, yes, they're real, and maybe leprechauns are real too. But it's that thing of cinema bringing people together, even people who are antisocial, and it's like, I don't necessarily want to talk to you, but when you're in that atmosphere of everybody just enjoying the same thing, it's very relaxing.
Yeah.
It suddenly it makes the stress and the anxiety go away, because you're just like, nobody in here is thinking about anything being judgmental. We're not even necessarily, well, maybe I am because I'm reviewing, but nobody's really judging the film. They're just there to relax and have a good time. And I get that experience so much more with those events that happen once a month. And it's become a game with myself where anytime a film was coming out, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to try and guess which one will be selected for this event next month. And I was mostly right. And then COVID happened and I'm like, Oh no,
Oh, it's not there. Yeah.
no more gift bags.
Yeah. Oh.
And it's just a shame that for some of us who have found like this way of balancing being social and antisocial, you take that away and it's like, oh, I'm back to being zero social.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally get that. Because me and my mum would go to the cinema quite a lot. She's my little cinema buddy. And we would usually go out for something to eat either before or after the film. And I miss eating out, but in a way I don't, because I don't know why, but I get so anxious when the waiters come up. It's like I rehearse what I'm gonna say in my head. And I'm like, right, this is what you're ordering. And I will say it to myself like 10 times in my head. And then they'll come up and be like, what are you having? And I'd be like, blah, 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 blah. And, like, and then I'm like, oh, God, why did I just do that? So, I mean, there's elements of going out to the cinema, like the kind of process I would go through, aspects that I miss and don't miss. Like, I mean, even just handing your cinema tickets over to get checked, I get really nervous about, because I just automatically think they're not going to let me in. I don't know why, because it's a valid ticket, but they're not going to let me in. And I was just like come to all these scary conclusions, and then it's only until once I get in the hall and I'm in my seat, I'm totally fine. But the lead up to all that is like so stressful.
I'm the same. I'm the way I talk myself into going to the movies, because it's so easy for me to talk myself out of it, is I would pre-purchase all my tickets online. But then I would spend, from the moment I'd ordered it and I had my ticket on my phone and I have the barcode and everything, I spend the whole time freaking out going, what if I accidentally delete it? Or what if I show up and my phone doesn't work? Or what if the battery dies? It's like, but it's like, I got it, but how do I prove it? And and then suddenly you sit down and it's like, okay, now I can kind of relax.
I can breathe, yeah. So I mean, there's many elements that I miss, but you know, there's a few things about it that I don't miss either. But I think it's like that with everything. You know, it's like being stuck at home all the time. You know, there's parts of it I like, but there's many things about it that I don't enjoy. So it kind of shows that there's pros and cons with kind of everything that you do in life, I think.
Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt about that. I think at least one of the pros that I can list is that I've been able to interact with more people lately than I have ever.
Yeah.
And even though I do a game show and I interact with a lot of people like that, like suddenly I'm finding myself being even more interactive. And usually it's something I try to avoid. And now I'm doing a podcast and I'm finding myself like, you know, me a year ago would not have in a million years gone like, I'm going to message this young woman and be like, do you want to be on? I'd be like, no, I'm not doing it, because she's going to be like, who is this crazy person wanting to talk to me? And then suddenly I'm just like, well, and then I'm like trying to like talk myself up first, and I'm going, well, I'm like, well, we kind of chat sometimes, and she responds to my stuff without any prompting, and she's really lovely, and she might say yes. And then still I'm typing up this little Instagram message and I'm like sweating bullets, like I'm trying to defuse a bomb.
Oh no. No, don't ever be nervous, especially talking to me. I'm just, you know.
But as a result, I've now gotten a chance to meet and interact and essentially interview an actress, something I never thought in a million years I'd ever have the opportunity to do. I thank you for giving me that opportunity. I'm so honored.
Oh.
And I thank you for everything that you've talked about today/tonight. And just interacting me and being so open about your autism, but also giving me another look behind the scenes of film, which for me is so fascinating, because that's not an experience I'm ever going to get to have. So hearing you talk about it in such detail and tell your personal stories is really moving for me, and I loved everything that you've said today.
Oh, thank you so much. I've really appreciated it. And you're great interacting with me. You're very calm, and I like that, you know. And I hate interviews where they're very uptight and serious and like, right, let's get this done, you know. I get very nervous, but you've made me feel very relaxed, which is great. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, I don't think anybody's ever going to put the words Ashley and serious in the same sentence. Yeah, no. If they were like, I die tomorrow, and they're like, what words do we put on her tombstone to describe it? Yeah, serious ain't coming up. I hate to think what is, but luckily I'll be dead, so I won't have to know that.
That's a good thing.
Yep, that's the benefits of popping off. Well, I once again, I could thank you all day, all night for giving me this opportunity and coming on and speaking to me. And I can only tell anybody who's watching or listening to this that I will have links all below for you to follow this gorgeous and talented woman on social media. I will also have a link to her IMDb page so that you can go and look through her filmography and check out some of the films that she has appeared in. I will once again encourage everybody to go and watch Matriarch because it is a bloody good film. I just have to keep saying it, and maybe some people will listen to me. And you also have a YouTube channel.
Yes, I do. I just kind of created it throughout lockdown just for kind of something to do. So I've got like a couple of reviews up there and kind of singing covers and things. Again, just out of sheer boredom.
And you recently uploaded kind of a compilation clip of scenes from you in various works that you've done.
Yeah, that was my show reel that was being updated. So yeah, I've got new and improved show reel.
I encourage anybody, there will also be a link down for her YouTube channel. Go and check out this show reel. It really will show you a lot of little snippets of the work that she's done and really show you just how talented she is. Just in case anybody thought that I was just, blowing air into their tires. I'm not.
Oh, thank you so much. You're so kind.
I know I've had some people, say on like I do a review and they're like, oh, the studio paid you to say that. I'm like, I wish. Give me some money. Thank you. I'm like, no, I can't lie about something if I don't genuinely believe it. It's not like acting. It's like, cool, sell us on this film or this person. It's like, oh, but you hate them. It's like, they have nice hair. Like it's a struggle, but I've not seen anything that would not make me want to absolutely promote anything you've done in the past. And please, any films you end up doing after COVID, or even if you end up doing TV appearances, please send me all the information. I would be more than happy to spread it around and get more people to watch it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
So once again, please go and check out all of her socials, and please remember, everybody, to take care of themselves and take care and be good to each other. And hopefully we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.